Okay, amid the changing global trade dynamics, the need for countries' competitiveness is becoming more and more compelling for trade and investment flows, especially into African frontier market countries, with the recent glut in the global oil market and its attendant impact on Nigeria's foreign exchange administration. Trade and capital flows into the country have been affected despite the country being in dire need of critical foreign direct and portfolio investments to fix critical infrastructure projects. Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission is government's body saddled with the responsibility of facilitating investments in the country, a task which appears daunting, especially at this time, given the effect of COVID-19 on global funds flow. I have joining me this morning the Executive Secretary and Chief Executive Officer of NIPC, Yewande Sadiku. Thank you very much, Ms. Sadiku, for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Chimizi, for having me.
So how challenging is your job at this critical time in history, given all of the issues around COVID-19 pandemic, NSAS protests, and slowdown in capital flows into the country in recent times?
What was a challenging job has become more challenging by these activities. The NSAS protests highlighted a need for a social awakening in Nigeria. And then the violence and needless destruction of public and private property after it gave concerns to many investors. The way I see it, because of the challenges that many investors talk about investing in Nigeria, it's important that all of us continue to give them comfort with the prospects of Nigeria as an investment destination. I actually believe those prospects remain strong, and I believe that is why we will continue to see investor interest. But we also need to continue the difficult work of making them comfortable. For me, what the NSAS protests and the violence that followed it, what they show is that we need to think slightly differently about the type and nature of investor engagement and investments that we have. It almost, for me, highlights the need to attract investments that have very, very high job creating impact and investments that have a large social impact. So probably now more than ever, we need to focus more attention on attracting impact investments and making sure, that there is a good spread across Nigeria's 36 states and the FCT.
Now, when you talk about attracting impactful investment, what's the role of NIPC in all of these?
NIPC was created really as an advocacy agency. Its legal mandate is to encourage, promote, and coordinate investments in Nigeria. But the things that investors need to get comfort first and then to actually make a move to invest are obviously beyond the capacity of one agency. So I see investment promotion necessarily as the job of all of government. And it is government at the executive, at the judiciary, and the legislature. It is federal, it is state, but it is all government agencies together. I mean, you mentioned, the social issues that we recently dealt with, the comment about security, the comment about policy, the comment about exchange rates. All of these are not within the control of any single agency. So it's the pooling together, it's the consistency and the thinking of government policies really is where investors draw comfort. But primarily our job in NIPC is, as I said, encouraging, promoting, and coordinating. We try to get as much data as we can to guide the work that we do and to use the information that we garner from our engagements with investors to help government agencies, with the, if you like, the voice of the investor, so that decisions that are made, so that policies and the like are better tweaked to investors' preferences. But investment promotion, really is an all-of-government approach. That's the best way to achieve success.
Right. Okay, talking about the NSAS protests, for instance, we saw the amount of destruction, that occurred during that protest. And of course, mainly in Lagos. And we know that Lagos remains the choice investment destination. So having seen this quantum of destruction due to NSAS protests, do you see that changing the narrative for Lagos State?
Before I respond to your question, I'd just like to say that from where I sit, from what I see, the NSAS protests themselves were actually largely peaceful. There was no destruction as a result of the protest, but the violence and the looting that followed it is what caused the destruction. It followed the protest, but I don't think that it was the same as the protest. Now, what it underscores, Lagos in terms of development in many ways was well ahead of many parts of Nigeria. And the nature of investments that Lagos needed was different from the rest of Nigeria because of the level of development and infrastructure that Lagos had. The destruction that followed the NSAS protests had taken some of that infrastructural development back somewhat, and obviously has affected a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of private people, who were running businesses in Lagos and providing jobs. So the kind of support that Lagos needs is different now from before. And I think the fact that, this spread across Lagos, as I mentioned, also underscores the need for impact investment. It is relevant in Lagos as it is relevant everywhere else. But the need to have the sort of investments that create meaningful jobs for young people, and the kind of jobs that are required, will be different for the different states and across Nigeria. If I can just, give an example, agriculture is deemed to be that sector that generally provides the highest, that generally has the highest impact on job creation. But the kind of jobs that agriculture provides, the largest quantum, will be jobs that have, fairly low skilled and that attract or that provide wages, that are not as high as you would get for jobs in manufacturing, as you would get for jobs in the service sectors, as you would get for jobs at the very high end, where you have jobs that have that require a high degree of intellectual capacity. The jobs that have a high degree of intellectual capacity will pay the most in terms of wages, but by nature, there are only a handful of them. These will be jobs in the tech space, these will be jobs in the financial sector, jobs in oil and gas and the like. We need jobs across the entire spectrum, but we probably now, more than ever, need to pay a lot more attention to creating large number of jobs in that spectrum between agriculture and manufacturing.
Now, okay, some experts have argued that when we talk about capital flows, to a large extent, it depends on how aligned with market realities your foreign exchange policy is. Do you agree with that? Hello, Ms. Sadiku, can you hear me? Well, I'm talking about the fact that experts argue that capital flows to a large extent depend on how aligned with market realities your foreign exchange policy is. Do you agree with this?
Reverse the trend. And we also need in those sectors, that will drive investor interest and investor inflow. But it is important that the policies be coherent, that there's a thread that runs across them that gives investors comfort. It is also important that it stays sufficiently stable for long enough for the investment horizon, particularly that direct investors take. Direct investors and portfolio investors have different investment investment horizons, and it is important that whatever we give comfort to both.
Well, Ms. Sadiko, I guess today is not one of those days that technology would actually be nice, but it's okay. We got what you are saying. Thank you very much for being on the show with us. Yewande Sadiko is the Executive Secretary and Chief Executive Officer of NIPC.